So many of the ideas that Colin and I have developed over the years, and that I've certainly built into a perspective around these topics, have come from my martial arts training and background, certainly. And the dojo, the place where we practice and train, is such an incredible environment for discussing these kinds of aspects because we get to practice them in real time in physical ways that make our discovery of them very real, right? When you're sparring with someone, when you're training, when you're trying to learn a new technique, you've got to follow the feel of things. You've got to follow your instincts as to when to execute something or not. You've got to be intelligent and smart about how you apply and approach those different aspects. One, to learn them, and two, to keep yourself safe, keep your partner safe. So it's just a really great environment for a real exploration of these ideas. And I'm really hoping that as we dive into them a little bit more and give you some of that perspective, that you'll find them useful and, at the very, very least, provocative and thought catalysts for you to maybe start kicking around these ideas in your own life and see if there's any value in them for you. So again, thanks for being here, and excited to share these ideas with you. Right out of the gate, let's talk about why these three things are useful to understand and identify and sort of codify, and then potentially how they work together, right? So I'm going to talk about some of these things in maybe ways that you've never heard of before, and hopefully that'll connect to a lot of things that you already know about these ideas, or that you've already thought about, or that you're already thinking about, but give them a different framework to find relevance and ground them in a more practical sense of application. So when we talk about our instincts, what we're talking about is our ability to decide. Okay, that's kind of how it hits me first and foremost, and feels most valuable in application. Now, why would I say it that way? I think the thing that I've learned from martial arts is that these, dynamics, or these phenomenon called our instincts, called our intuition, called our intelligence, are all forms of energy. And just like our emotions or our feelings, we feel them in different parts of our body. And that's maybe one of the cool things about there's lots of cool things about studying jiu-jitsu, but one of the cool things about it is it gets you really present and aware of how energy is moving around in your body. Okay, I would venture to guess that all of you have experienced what you have maybe at times called a gut feeling, right? Something hits you, or you get news that's surprising, or you get an opportunity that comes up unexpectedly, and we have kind of a gut feeling about it, right? In the way that I've experienced that in my years of teaching and in my years of practice, in the martial arts and in my coaching work, and the work I do with leadership development in the corporate world, that feeling tends to literally hit us in our gut, right? And that's why we call it a gut feeling, or follow your gut. Our instincts are the mechanism that we use, that has been developed over millions of years of evolution, is one of the gifts of our nervous system to help us differentiate, at least as far as I can tell, the difference between love and fear. Right? That's how we register that feeling that occurs in our gut when we get that initial surprise of something, or something unexpected. And whether that thing is really positive or really negative, we get a feeling in our belly. Okay? That's what we're going to call our instinct. And really, if for any of you that know us, and certainly have done any work with me, I talk about our emotions in a very straightforward and simplistic way that I'm going to share with you here. Really, and I mean, and neuroscience has proven this, and lots of research into human development and anthropological study has kind of proven this to be, what I'm going to say, to be true enough that it survives application. So we can try to apply that definition here, which is, really, there are only really two human emotions, really, right? When we talk about emotion as energy, the most powerful ones that we experience, and We'll get to the rest of them as we go, because we certainly have lots of feelings about things, but really our emotions are boiled down to two aspects primarily that kind of stand the test of time no matter how we apply it. The first one is love, okay, and feelings of love, and the second one is fear. Okay, so why would we distill those down to the most basic and foundational of all human emotion, right? Broadly enough to categorize like all emotion as being some substrate of either love or fear. Well, really, when we think about our instincts, neuroscience has proven to us that we can talk about that also in terms of fight or flight. Now, there's some different shades between fight and flight, which Colleen is really expert on and working with, in terms of like what's called freeze, what's called fawn, right? But in the broad stroke spectrum, fight or flight is something that we can all relate to, right? We've all had an experience of fight or flight, whether it was in a personal situation, a work situation, an emotional situation, or a physical situation, right? We all sort of get that, oh, okay, and that feeling resides in our guts. That's what we call our instinct. What is love? Love is the energy that makes us want to move towards something. Right? That's love. And could we parse out that definition with much more specificity? Of course. But for our purposes, let's just suspend some disbelief for a minute and think of it in that way. Love is the thing that moves us towards something, right? Well, what's fear? I'm sure you've all pretty much guessed. Fear is the thing that makes us retreat from something, right? So either we're expanding towards something or we're constricting and retreating from something, okay? And usually what we rely on in terms of our gut instinct is the ability that it gives us to decide in the moment, which one are we going to do? Are we going to move towards that thing or are we going to move away from it, right? So of the three components that we're going to talk about, the first one being our gut, the next two being our heart and our head, we're going to call that the first D of the 3D kind of examination we're going to do of these energies called instinct, intuition, and intelligence. So that's what our guts help us do, right? That gut hit, follow your gut, that gut feeling. Does this feel good for me? Does this feel like it's going to be positive and uplifting and pleasurable, or am I going to retreat from it, right? Is it scary? Is there something there that's dangerous? Okay. And whether or not we are hearing, again, positive news or negative news, if we really get kind of centered and relaxed for a moment and think about that, pretty much everybody that ever proposed this idea to goes, oh yeah, right, that's right. Yeah, you kind of get that rush in that gut or that feeling in your gut that's really strong. It says move forward or retreat. Okay, so that's sort of the foundation of what instincts are, how they function in our nervous system physiologically and emotionally, and it's kind of the building block, the foundation of what we're going to move to next. Okay, so we're going to kind of go in the wrong order here, technically, and we're going to jump to our head intelligence, right? So what's similar about our head and our gut? Carl can tell you lots about this, which is really, really cool, but they find as we get more and more sophisticated in our scientific medical techniques, particularly in the areas of neuroscience, we'll find that there are more things that resemble brain cells actually in our guts, right, in our intestines, in our stomach, in our digestive tract, than we have in our actual brain. So what does that tell us? That tells us that our guts are capable of some form of intelligence, right? And I think that'll make sense as we talk about what we think of as intelligence in terms of our brains and its operation, and go through that. So there is a certain kind of, let's almost call it thinking that goes on in our gut, right? And that thinking is very simple, it's very straightforward, but it's very potent, right? Again, it registers as what we're calling, for the purposes of discussion tonight, as instinct, right? Our instincts towards something. Well, if we think about the formal way in which we think of intelligence, right, as something that resides in our head, in our thinking, in our brain, all the neurochemicals and the neurotransmitters that are firing back and forth, the synapses that are exchanging information and energy, then we can think of intelligence, right? If our guts are the ability to decide, right? They promote the ability to decide in a very black or white way, okay? Our intelligence, okay, and we could have endless debate about what intelligence is and isn't, but in a functional sense, the role of our intelligence is to differentiate. That's our second D, right? What does it mean to differentiate? It means to be able to tell things apart, to look at something and say, well, this is different from this, and this is different from this. Right? If we think about how we think about how about dogs, well, we don't look at a dog in an intellectual and rational sense and say, well, that dog's the same as every other dog, and every other dog in the world is exactly the same as that dog, right? We can separate them. Okay, that's actually one of the hallmarks of IQ testing, and one of the metrics that's used to actually measure a person's awareness, and even as far to go as quote unquote, the psychological definition of their sanity, right? If they can tell things apart. Okay, so our guts inhabit a certain kind of knowing, a certain kind of intelligence, a certain kind of wisdom that help us decide if we're going to move forward towards something that feels pleasurable and loving, or if we're going to retreat from something that feels dangerous and full of fear. Okay. Our head, our brain, which is another processing center, right? It's how we process information and intake perception, and then process that raw data into categories and conclusions. As a processing center, the D that we're going to use to describe the activity of intelligence, or the energy of intelligence, the action of intelligence, is to differentiate. Okay. So why did I sort of jump out of order there, right? I kind of went, okay, well, I went from the bottom, our guts, to the top, our heads. Because for most of us, most of the time, and again, really curious to see what your experience of these ideas are, but generally speaking, we all at times kind of walk around either being stuck in our heads, right? Only processing with our brains, only thinking and rationalizing our way through activities or life, okay? Or in our gut, right? I'm sure, as I know I have, and Call has, and most everybody I've ever talked to, sometimes you find that those two things are battling with each other, right? You can think about, oh man, this is really good for me to do what I'm doing here, and I think it's the right thing to do, but my gut is in contrast to that. Okay? My gut is saying, oh, no, that doesn't feel safe. Okay, there feels like things that are there that could be dangerous, okay, or unpleasant, or anxiety inducing. Okay, so we can see people's behavior, right? We can tell which one, if we really pay attention, sort of where people are operating from. Okay, people that are just driven by their instincts mostly and are disconnected from their heart or their head, their behavior can be rash, it can be aggressive, it can be unpredictable, it can feel dangerous, it can be bullying, right? Or they can be frozen and shut down by fear and totally withdrawn and introverted. Okay, those aspects of just sort of quote unquote only operating on the information our gut is giving us in any given situation can tend to make us very reactionary, right? We become, in Chinese medicine, and Call will describe it better than me, but we become very hot in our temperament. Right? We're reactionary. We aren't open. We take things in and spit them back out really quickly. Okay. Conversely, when we're stuck in our head, okay, we can be kind of appear aloof and detached and kind of cold and overly rational, very distanced from people. We don't necessarily feel like we're really present. Okay. Part of the reason why that is because generally speaking, just to throw this idea out to you, thinking and our brains function, okay, mostly to help us make calculations and assessments that predict future outcomes. Right? It's about the future in general. Okay? Why do I think that? Why do I feel that? When we're overthinking, right? We've all felt that feeling of overthinking, I'm sure, and that anxiety that gets created from the anticipation of, well, what if this goes wrong, or what if this goes wrong, or oh, well, I got to be prepared for this, and we can run through, 10,000 scenarios a second, okay, of trying to process intellectual information and rational information, factual information, to give us some sense of what we're going to be stepping into. All right, that's the anticipation aspect. What um, situation we might face in the future. Okay, and we can just spin ourselves up into a frenzy, right? Overthinking and being stuck in our heads, and all that activity that's supposed to bring us some clarity and hopefully soothe us can just make us feel more and more and more and more overwhelmed, right? So if we say that the gut itself and instincts and reactions towards love and fear in a very primal fight or flight sense make us kind of hot, right? We can say that overthinking and being stuck in our head without any connection to the rest of our processing tools, our heart and our gut, can make us kind of cold and kind of unemotional and unresponsive, can make us overthink, which can then create feelings of even more confusion when what we're trying to use our intelligence for, right? Our ability to differentiate things. We're trying to use it to help us settle confusion, but yet we get stuck in our brain and we're rattling around and we're going a million miles an hour. We're getting more and more anxious, more and more confused, and more uncomfortable. We could say that that activity is very cold, right? So thinking, our rational processes can tend to be about the future, okay, about objectivity and trying to be as objective as possible, okay, kind of detached and distant, right? Our gut, right, the place where we decide and process whether we're going to move forward towards something that feels pleasurable and loving or pull away from something that feels fearful and dangerous. That's kind of subjective, right, and hot. That's why sometimes it's really tough to just quote unquote trust your gut, right? Because the thing that we're maybe looking at, we might see it intellectually and look at it as something that doesn't particularly feel dangerous or full of fear, but something in our gut is telling us that we shouldn't go towards it. We should actually get out of there as quickly as we can. We should back away, and then we get the both of those things kind of in contradiction to each other. They're kind of battling each other. And in the martial arts, we talk about the concept and the process of alignment. So we could say that, well, okay, our gut and our head are out of alignment, right? I got a team of horses pulling this way and a team of horses pulling this way. Okay, and I'm super excited to hear Call add some more to this, but that's actually part of the process that causes us to freeze, right, in the fight or flight paradigm, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. It's when our head's going one way and our gut's going the other way, right? Our thinking, our intelligence is saying, no, take this action. Our gut's saying, no, take this action. And they're opposing each other. That's when we freeze. Okay? So again, trying to talk about these things in really, really practical, applicable, real world ways. We could, I could happily spend an evening talking about intelligence and its applications and what it is and what it isn't as a concept for hours. Okay, but we're not trying to do anything more here right now than distill things down to their most fundamental elements, because in their fundamental elements they're more simplistic, and simplistic things are easier to apply, especially under pressure, right? And who doesn't want to be able to make good decisions, aligned decisions, follow their instinct, think things through clearly, and take effective action, particularly when you're under pressure? I don't know if I've talked to anybody that doesn't want to be better at that. And certainly I strive to be better in that. And I know Call does as well too. And I'm sure all of you do as well too, or else you wouldn't really be here spending your hard-earned time with us for an evening of conversation. So I'm going to pause there for a quick sec. Check in with Call, see how everybody's doing, see if we've got any questions or any notes come through. We'll do a little recap, and then we'll tie it up with the third piece, which is intuition and kind of where it tends to be felt physically in the body when we're describing that energy.
I'll keep puttering away. I'll keep being a little more in and out than normal. And my only tertiary thing to add, because I'm pulling out all my $12 words today, is when we were talking about fight or flight, one of the things that I often like to add in is for all those F's, right? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and fit in. We all have one of those that we tend to go towards more naturally. Dana tends towards fight. I tend towards flight and freeze. Any of us who were brought up in a schoolyard where there were bullies, where there were larger kids who like to have their ways, we tend to slide into fit in or fawn because that's the best way to survive. So part of what I really like about this and finding ways to bring these three things together is when you have this framework for how to tie the intuition, instinct, and intelligence together. When you're in a state of calm, when you're in a well-resourced state, you can examine where you normally go and you can set up how to use these when you go into that state of fight, flight, etc. So they're there in your templating in the back of your head in that 40 million bits of data part of your brain rather than the 40 bits of data conscious part of your brain. And every time it gets easier. So you don't have to be perfect at it right out of the gate. It's one of those things that after tonight, it will be there. You take a little bit of time in a state of calm to set up these concepts for the next time. It'll be at hand even more quickly. Back to you. I'm going to try to let people in again.
Can I have some of your water, please?
You may.
Thank you.
No problem.
Awesome, folks. Where'd you want me to put it? Super. So again, we're, any of you that have worked with either of us and or attended anything like this, man, our time can go fast. So thanks for hanging in there with us and following along, trying to sort of get through the fundamentals and the basics of the information that we're sharing, and that's why we set up our question and answer period afterwards, because we really hope that these ideas are thought provoking for you and are catalyzing your thinking and saying, well, no, Danny, I don't really think of it like that. No, I'd call that this, and right, love that stuff, want that stuff. Contradict us, challenge us, give us your authentic thoughts about how this information is landing with you, because we want the discussion to continue, right? We're trying to learn as much as about these topics as you are, and we're just being given the great privilege to have your attention to catalyze and start the conversation, right? That's what's exciting about all this. So keep all your ideas flowing, write down your questions if you've got any, and know that they're going to be nothing but welcomed as we get to discussion portions. Also, too, don't hesitate if something's really, really kind of going off in left field and it's not making sense and it's making it difficult for you to kind of keep pace with the ideas that we're proposing. Don't hesitate to let us know that as well too, because sometimes if you're feeling that way, somebody else might be feeling that way, and that'll give us a chance to even get sharper in our clarity and communication as we give you the information, right, so that you can get it even more cleanly.
And then I can give my rant about how undervalued intuition is.
Oh, gosh, yeah. That's a perfect segue. It's going to set it up great, because that's what we're going to talk about next.
Stay tuned, folks. I'll be ranting soon.
They're epic. Calls, rants are things to behold. Trust me, I know. Most of the time they're about me not eating enough vegetables, but we'll get to that later. Okay, so this thing called intuition, right? It's such a loaded and charged kind of word and topic and idea, and some people get really excited about it, some people get really afraid of it, some people take it really far out into the ethers of extrasensory perception and psychic phenomenon, and other people use it as basically just sort of an interchangeable word for like a gut feeling or an instinct. All are welcome and all can be included under the concept and the codification that we're going to offer tonight. Okay, so if our instincts are kind of connected to our gut, and that's our gut is sort of the processing center for that energy, for that information. If our brain and our head is the processing center for that energy that we're calling intelligence, right? Head differentiates, gut decides. What does our heart do? Right? That's another major processing center, and it's really fascinating. I'm looking forward to talking about these things with more detail than I ever could in terms of the Chinese medicine aspect, because in the Chinese medicine model, all organs have a function. All organs have a particular energy. All organs have their own pulse. All organs are responsible for handling different emotions and energy in the body, right? So it's pretty cool to add this thinking to that 5, 6,000 year old tradition of Chinese medicine because, man, it just all of a sudden feels and sounds so logical, right? And that's really great because no matter sort of what your entrance is into these kinds of ideas, especially around intuition, right? If intuition feels like something that's more powerfully spiritually grounded to you and is something that you think of in terms of, our higher senses and, source connection and all those kinds of things, fantastic. These definitions and the backing information uh, on how Chinese medicine works support that. There's all kinds of room for it. If it's something that's much more secular and practical to you, these definitions and the resulting, self-evident information that comes from Chinese medicine will also make sense too, right? Because that's all we're concerned about is like, how do we get these things clear so we can use them, right? Gut, instincts, decides, move forward, retreat. Head, energy is intelligence. Its chief purpose and goal is differentiation, right? How do I tell the difference between this thing and this thing, this occurrence and this occurrence, this fact and this fact, this object and this object, right? Our heart is all about our intuition and what we're going to call discernment, right? That's the third D of the three Ds, right? We've got decide, decision, differentiate, discern. Okay? What does it mean to discern? Again, we could, look up the derivation of the dictionary definitions, which I do all the time because I'm a total word nerd. But for practical purposes, and I see this in the dojo all the time, and while we're practicing physical techniques in ways that are immediately responsive and give us feedback, to discern is to be able to look into something with knowing, right? With a sense of knowing. In other words, discernment is about seeing the truth of what something is or isn't.
Discernment is just closer to wisdom than knowledge.
Very much so, definitely, right? And that's a great support point there, Carl, because when we can discern something, right, we can look at it and we can understand what it is or isn't without having to first directly experience its effects, right? So we can look at, and go, huh, yeah, we're at the lake today, and the sun's up, and it's after, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so that water I think is pretty warm, right? Without having to go jump and splash around in it first, we can get a sense by, looking at the way the water moves, feeling the temperature of the air, the time of day, okay? We can look at it and say, well, I think it's a pretty safe bet that that water is going to be fairly comfortable and warm, right? Without having to go and jump into it first. Does that make sense? That's what discernment is. It's being able to look at something and learn something truthful and real about its nature, okay, by your observation of it, okay, without having to experience the direct effect of that thing, right? We can look at fire and go, well, that's probably pretty hot, okay, without having to be burned by it. And I know that sounds like a really super simplistic definition, but it is so on purpose, okay, because again, those fundamental, self-evident, simplified truths are easy to apply and test out in real time. So why does discernment become the overriding process of the energy that we're calling intuition? It's one I'm sure you've heard before in terms of the terminology I'm about to use, but I love it because it's so explanatory. When we think about intuition, we automatically can look at the word and go, oh, into it, right? So intuition is the energy that makes us curious and focused consciously on looking into something, right? Examining it, getting close to it, pulling it to us in a more intimate fashion so that we can understand what it is and what it isn't. Okay? That's why I'm describing what occurs in our heart, okay, as intuition, as the process of discernment, because it's driven by feeling, right? We feel things. We are feeling impact. We're feeling effect. We're feeling the experience of something that we're then looking into. Right? Why do we differentiate that from emotion? Okay, because we could say that fear is an emotion, love is an emotion. Those are the primal energies that drive us as human beings. Right? All things, if we really think about it, we could distill them down to, oh, well, did I love that thing? Did I want to move towards it? Did I fear that thing? Did I want to move away from it? Okay. So kind of what happens is that everything else that we experience in terms of our emotional palette, I'm calling right now a feeling, right? Because what happens is that we get that gut hit of something that says, oh, this is exciting or this is dangerous. Okay. Then what do we do? And you can track this. And we kind of work on this sort of thing in the dojo all the time, because when we're talking about combative situations where we're practicing self-defense and offensive techniques against another human being, we train safely, we take very good care of each other, but that right away for most people is fear-inducing, right? Nobody wants to get into a physical confrontation with anybody, okay? And if we do, it's usually because we're so scared and feeling so endangered in those rare instances that we create the feeling of anger to bolster us and move forward, or to get away from that person, or to stop them from confronting us physically. So why it becomes important in that setting, and why we're transferring sort of that practice from the dojo into real life, right, is because it's really, really hard to think clearly and let the other two centers of information processing contribute to the decision you're going to make and the actions you're going to take under that pressure of fight or flight fear. Does that make sense? Right? So we get that gut feeling, and we'll describe it on both sides of the coin. A negative feeling, the fear feeling that makes us want to pull away, or a feeling of excitement and pleasure that makes us want to move forwards to the thing that's emanating that energy that we're calling love. So, something hits us. I can think of a million examples, but I'll use Colleen as a practical one. I, come walking in the door after I've trained all night at the dojo. Okay? And the minute I walk through the door, I'm expecting that I'm going to say hi to Call. We're going to greet each other like we always do, and then we'll figure out some food, and I'll take a shower or whatever's happening. But I walk through the door, and Call says, "Hun, watch out!" Right away, bam! I get a feeling in my gut. Okay, I'm like, oh. Okay, I trust Call. I love Call. She loves me. She trusts me. She's giving me a warning right now. There must be something dangerous around. Right? I don't know what it is. She's got the vantage point to see it. I don't. My fear makes me go, whoa, and jump back. Okay? What does that energy do? Right away, it shoots from here to here. Okay? Now, it always does that, but if I'm not paying attention to the information that this processing center is trying to give me, it'll go straight from my gut, bypass, like right through my heart. I won't get that information. It'll hit my head, right? What will that energy do? It'll produce a thought, right? That thought, that feeling that comes from, hey, hon, watch out. Oh, fear. Bang. What the crap's going on? Right? Okay, that's the thought, or that's the thinking that I might have around the situation. I've been in lots of fight or flight situations, some purposely, some by accident, having been an athlete and a martial artist my whole life. And I tell you, when you get scared that fast, that deeply, that quickly, that unexpectedly, okay, the thought that you have is geared towards reacting as quickly as you can towards making yourself safe. It's almost so quick that sometimes we don't even realize that we had the thought until after the action has been taken. Right? So it hits my gut, bang, shoots to my head. I'm too stressed and scared about the future danger that might be coming. I don't even register the feeling in my heart. And I drop my gym bag, jump back, and then, raise my voice to Call, going, "What's wrong? Tell me what I got to do." Okay?
I want to know what happens in this story now.
And she says, "Hey, whoa, relax, calm down. Your sister sent you an Amazon gift, and the box was in front of the door. You didn't see it. I didn't want you to step on it and break it."
This by no means, you don't have to support Amazon if you're anti-Amazon.
Right, there you go.
Just so you know.
FedEx sent it. Okay. Yay, small. Well, the FedEx isn't a small business either, so I don't know. The local courier brought it. Etsy sent it to us. Okay. So what will happen in that instance is that once I kind of go, oh, okay, so there's no danger, there's nothing catastrophic. Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to step on the box and wreck potentially whatever was inside of it, but whew, okay. Then I calm down. Okay, everything deregulates. My gut relaxes. My head kind of clears up. And then I start processing how I feel about it, right? I go, oh man, wow, Cole, that scared the heck out of me. Geez, I thought there was somebody in the apartment, or that there was a fire or a flood or something really dangerous was happening. Okay, so that's an example of the fear kind of dynamic that occurs. That if we're mindful and paying attention, we can have the information available to us from our gut, right? Our instinct, our heart, our intuition, okay, and our head. We can decide, differentiate, and decide, discern, and differentiate. Okay? It also works positively, and I'm going to give you this example really quick, just because um, it's kind of a good segue into why we're talking about these things and how, if we can stay mindful enough, present enough, responsive enough, we can keep our gut, our heart, and our head aligned, okay, and start to experience how powerful that alignment is between our intelligence, our intuition, and our instincts to helping us make effective decisions in the moment, particularly under pressure.
And then I'm going to rant.
Yes. Leave lots of time for Colin to rant. Okay. So I walk through the door. Colleen says something that's surprising to me or that I don't expect. But she comes towards the door with a big smile on her face. She goes, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what just happened. Right? So her demeanor and delivery tells me that it's something positive. Okay? Boom. Again, I'm going to have that registered feeling that hits my gut. I'm going to kind of feel an excitement and a rush of energy because I'm like, wow, that sounds really positive. I love and trust Colin. She loves and trusts me. If she thinks it's really positive, it probably really is. That's exciting. I want to move towards that thing. Okay? It's usually under those circumstances when we have something that feels like love and potentially pleasurable and positive, that we will have that same thing happen, right? Well, the gut feeling from our gut will shoot up into our chest, right? We'll feel that flood of energy, and I'll go, my gut will be like, yay! And my heart and the feeling that gets produced there will be, wow, I wonder what cool thing this is that Cole wants to share with me, right? That's the feeling. And then me saying that sentence or responding to her with like, oh my gosh, hon, that sounds great. Is that energy being continued from my gut into my heart up to my head, where I formulate a thought that goes, oh man, that sounds great. I can't wait for you to tell me about it. Okay. What we want to be able to do, on top of being able to recognize how those dynamics could potentially work together and why they work together and how they naturally are designed to work together, is to get and understand and get really anchored and grounded in the pleasurable feeling that occurs when it's exciting news that hits our gut. It makes us want to move towards that thing, okay, with excitement. It creates a thought that is anchored in the feeling that we get physiologically, right? Because you feel that. We all do that. It hits our gut, that flutter in our chest, that sort of like, and it's really cool. I'll tell you more about the neuroscience. Part of what's going on when something's pleasurable, we get this sort of feeling of euphoria in our head that's anchored by dopamine and serotonin being triggered because we're anticipating pleasure. If we get really used to that feeling and understand what that feeling feels like, know, even in rudimentary terms, what generates it, why it occurs so consistently as in our human experience, one, we'll know what that feeling feels like, and we'll consciously pursue it in more and more productive and responsible ways. And two, we'll recognize what that feeling doesn't feel like, right? When we actually are afraid, when we do want to retreat, when we do want to pull back, and we do sense that there's some danger there, okay, regardless of what our head's thinking or not. Knowing what it feels like to have all those things working in alignment, okay, will give you the support and the sustenance to function in that same aligned way under potential threat, perceived threat of fear and danger. Okay? Why is that important? That's important because if you can make really good decisions out of alignment, utilizing your instincts, following and acknowledging your intuition, your feelings, okay, and then being able to tell the difference between what's in front of you that could look scary or dangerous and the possibility that even though it looks that way, it might be something else. Okay, how effective are you going to be in making decisions then? Right. In other words, what we're talking about is the mechanisms that allow us to stay what we call responsive, right? Where we can actually like acknowledge our emotions, honor our feelings, okay? think something through and then make a good decision about it, as compared to whether we are just so scared that we disconnect from the rest of our body, only think with our head, get overwhelmed in the moment, frozen in fear, okay? Or, which is a reaction, right? Freezing is a reaction. Or we get so scared and startled by the unexpected information and energy that's coming at us that all we do is react to it, okay? Which tends not to be the thing that we feel the best about after we get all the information of the situation that we were in and realize that, oh, maybe we didn't differentiate and discern clearly enough what was actually going on in front of us. Right? That's why differentiation. Maybe I got bit by a dog when I was a kid. Okay. This dog that's approaching me looks kind of like that dog that bit me, that scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. Is it the same dog? Well, logically, we recognize that it's not. Right? Is it coming in the same with the same demeanor? Logically, we can recognize that it's not. But if we are anchored and only going to be guided by our instinct and our gut response, the powerful emotion of fear is going to make us make a decision that after the fact we may not feel as good about. We may even regret. Right? I'm going to run screaming away from that dog. I'm going to kick that dog. I'm going to yell at the person who's walking the dog. Okay? And we'll wrap up this portion with this. The reason why it's so important to recognize that if we can pause for a moment and take a look into the situation, or look at the owner, look at the dog, okay, and engage our intuition, engage our heart, engage our discernment, what we're going to be able to do is make the best decision we can in present time, not out of fear of the past, not out of anticipation, anxiety of the future, but as to what's actually going on right in front of us. Because our heart is the only organ or the only processing center that actually is processing the energy that it's taking in present time, right? Guts anchored in the past, heads looking to the future, okay? Our heart is the thing that makes us present in the moment with this particular situation, this particular person, this particular action, separate from the ones we're worried about in the future or the ones we've got scared of in the past. That's why we hear things like people saying, ah, you know what? Yeah, that was a really good speech you gave. It was from the heart. Okay? That means that it was full of feeling. That means that people felt that feeling and they felt like you were talking directly to them. And these are the kinds of ideas and the ways that we work with these three energies, right? Instincts, intuition, and intelligence. So we've taught courses on this stuff before. We could have multiple evenings about these ideas and share lots of thoughts. But we want to at least endeavor to give you kind of the building blocks, the basics of the way in which we've worked with these ideas to, not even because of anything particularly special about Colin and I, but we figured some stuff out and we shared it with people. And why we're sharing them with you is because the feedback that we get from those people that we work with in our various forms, individually or together in groups, is so wonderful and so powerful that we kind of feel like it's our duty to share it with everyone, because so many people get such good results from working with these concepts in the way that we're suggesting.
And I really want to hear what questions people might have about this. And for just a quick rant, I'll do a quick rant tonight, which is that, and thank you, because I was so busy taking care of other things that
of course,
you carried most of that, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you for trying to get everybody in.
Yeah, and didn't, so.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I feel.
It's recorded. You can watch it later. We promise.
Yeah, I feel badly.
Sorry about that, guys. That's crazy.
Part of what I love about this is the reclamation of it, because so many of us, and again, if you're here, it's either because you know us or you found us on Facebook and there's something about us that appealed to you, and thank you for being here, regardless of which camp you fall in. And that means, to a certain extent, you had some instinct, you had some intuition that led you here. And so many people have had those things minimized over the course of their lives, have been told that, oh, it's just intuition. You're not going to be one of those woo-woo people, are you? Yes, your instinct said this. And there is this very North American pressure to rely on intelligence and intelligence alone. And that does us all such a disservice. Even that 40 million bits of data to 40 bits of data comparison earlier, your conscious mind processes 40 bits of data per second. The rest of your mind, your other than conscious mind, the rest of your nervous system processes 40 million bits of data per second. That's not the logical part of your brain. And we are taught to prize and prioritize that 40 bits of data, teeny tiny logical part of our brain. I love intelligent people. I love those moments where I can cognate my way through something, when people tell me something that I haven't thought of before. It's amazing. And it's not everything. And if we are not tying it back into those other two aspects for ourselves, we are missing out. And so many people, I won't do the whole TCM thing unless it's useful at some point, but so many people look at that yin and yang. So I had a big discussion in the clinic this week over if yin and yang means feminine and masculine, and it does, but it doesn't. Yin is what are considered feminine. That's again a very Western world attributes. Yang is masculine attributes. But yin is the gas in the tank. It is everything that has to do with substance, and yang is what you do with it. You have to combine the two. Chinese medicine says you have to combine all of your assets, or what's the point of having them? And so many highly intuitive people, so many kids, so many women who have had to get through life focusing on their intelligence, or they won't be taken seriously. Sure, you can pretend you're leading with your intelligence, but when you can combine these three, you're going to out wisdom the smartest people in the room.
That's awesome, Colin. It's making me think again too why.
And then we'll have questions.
Absolutely, why I'm so compelled around these ideas, and I'm curious to see how many of you can relate to this. It's kind of heartbreaking to me how many people I talk to on a regular basis, on a daily basis in my work, on all levels, on the personal side and the professional side, how many people are just absolutely almost frozen because they're riddled with doubt. Really not cool. Really bothers me, actually. And part of the reason why I say that is because never mind like our instincts or our intuition, like we can be so thoroughly educated as children to not pay attention to those because they're useless and stupid, and you can't trust them. You can't trust your instincts. You don't know anything. You can't trust your intuition. What is that even? You know, your head's in the clouds. You know, not everything is fairy dust and unicorns. And we get so thoroughly disconnected from those things. And I'm not trying to demonize anybody, because a lot of times the adults that are doing that to us, they're doing it because it was done to them, and they're actually doing it really lovingly, right? They're
That's
doing
all
it.
they know.
They're doing it because, yeah, that's all they know, and they think that that's the best thing for you, right? You know, as an athlete and growing up in sports and my whole life, I don't know how many coaches I had tell me, "Get your head in the game," right? Get like, you know, stop daydreaming with anything other than the factual focus of what's needed for, you know, this activity that I want you to do, called this game or this tournament or this match. So that's pretty debilitating as it is. I know I felt that way. I certainly have lots of empathy if any of you have ever felt that way, and most people do feel that way at some point or another, right? Just full of doubt, like these things that come to us so naturally. We're told aren't of any use, and we're told don't have any real validity. Okay, I think the one that really knocks me off my feet is that people are almost kind of attuned to and used to the idea of being told that their instincts aren't valid and that their intuition is a fairy tale. But the one that really nails it is when I see that doubt being spread around people's idea of their own intelligence. That one breaks my heart, I have to admit. Right? I don't know how many people I talk to who do not realize how smart they are. And, you know, people can say, "Oh, Danny, you're saying that to be nice to us." And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess so. I hope it makes you feel good about yourself, and I hope it's nice. But I'm also more fundamentally saying it because it's what I'm experiencing of you right now. It's true to me. And I'm going to tell you what my true experience is. I'm not going to say, "Oh, well, that's everybody else's experience because it's mine." But I'm going to say, wow, man, you're smart.
Mhm.
Wow, you're able to differentiate things. Wow, you're a good, strong, clear thinker. And even in the work that I do sometimes with people, again, both personally and professionally, it's amazing what just acknowledging that in someone can do. So when I think about the power of just saying, hey, you know what? I don't know if people told you that you weren't very smart or that you didn't have a lot of intelligence to offer, but I got to tell you that my experience of you is incredible because I'm seeing your own personal, unique kind of genius come out. That alone sometimes is powerfully transformational. So if we could add that new kind of refound confidence and encouragement to our intuitive senses, if we could add that newly found and rediscovered is a good way to think of it because it's not gone, it's just disconnected from it, it's just misplaced. If we could reconnect to that in terms of our instinctual ability and our ability to perceive from an emotional, energetic realm, right? And we're not talking about anything that can't be proven by science, quote unquote, but just in practical ways. Like how much more confident and in your own personal authority would you feel if not only were you not doubting your intelligence, but you were also not doubting your intuition, if you were also not doubting your instincts. Okay, so that's what drives, I think, the majority of what's fascinating to these ideas, about these ideas for Colleen and I. So again, we're super excited to share that discussion with you.
Yeah. So I have a million more examples I could give, but I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So that's our hour. If people do have to get going, please do. But we
Mm-hmm.
did set aside some time afterwards because we'd love to know if there's any questions you have or any particular slant that's more useful for you.
Absolutely. And for anybody that has to leave and get going back to like life with kids and jobs and work, thank you so much for joining us. It's really great to have you. Um, know that the question and answer period will also be recorded and put up online at some point. So even if you can't participate now, you can still enjoy it later if you're so inclined. So thank you again, and have a great rest of your evening. Anybody that wants to stick around, please do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the fun part for us when we get specific.